Welcome to another episode of Venture Chronicles, episode number 2 to be exact. In this episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about the upcoming Social Impact World Summit. This is the second time that I've organized this virtual event, and I want to talk more specifically about some of the lessons that I've learned from the last summit, or last year's summit, I should say, that I'm taking over to this year's summit, and just some of the things that, if you're interested in starting your own virtual conference or virtual events, some of the things that I've learned along the ways that I feel like would definitely help you in achieving a successful event. And so the first lesson that I want to talk about is expecting the unexpected. Now, with the virtual events, anything can happen. In person events, anything can happen. But in the virtual world, you have to deal with internet connectivity. That's your connectivity as well as the connectivity of your speakers. And so, frankly, anything can happen. You can have an internet outage yourself. You can have a speaker or multiple speakers have internet outages. A lot of different things can happen. And so, what I learned is you have to expect the worst and essentially hope for the best. What that means is prepare in advance. So, think about the worst case scenario. So, let's say an internet outage. Okay, what's the contingency plan? Have something in place that's going to allow you to come out the other side. And so this can come in different flavors. And so how I've planned for these type of things is, number one, make sure your internet connection is solid. Do some tests, do some speed tests. There's free tools online that you can leverage to see how strong your internet connection is. Take advantage, if possible, depending on where your router is in your home, of being hardwired in with an Ethernet cable. But also think about, what if you had a complete internet outage and worst case scenario, you had to reschedule the conference or the summit, whatever it is that you're planning to do. And so thinking about those alternative things can really help you in the event something terrible happens and for whatever reason that summit or virtual event that you work so hard on can't actually happen. And so what I'm doing to essentially plan ahead is stress test my internet connection, but also have a plan in place to where, if I have an internet outage or a speaker has an internet outage, okay, let's record the session after, the actual event day, and then send that to attendees as an example. It's not the best experience because obviously you want people kind of live and being able to interact and engage, but at the end of the day, it's all about the content and learning. And so if you can at least get that content to your attendees, at least they have that. So that's something that I'm thinking about on my end as well. And going back to last year, one of the things that I did to really stress test my whole setup, and side note, even though I did stress test my whole connection, I still had a technical issue last year, but I was prepared for it and I was able to get through it. And one of the things that I did was I actually tested the platform that I was using for my virtual summit. And so I had two laptops. I had basically the speaker or the admin laptop, and then I had a laptop that basically was an attendee. So it gave me a chance to see what the experience would be like for an attendee, but also what the experience would be like for me as an actual admin that's having to put all the pieces in place and essentially run the show as the solo organizer. That was, in terms of preparation, probably the best thing that I did, because I mentioned that technical issue that I had. We actually had a couple of technical issues last year. I had an internet outage and one of my speakers had an internet outage at the same time. And, going into that event, I had a feeling that was going to happen, at least on my end, because at that time, I didn't have the best internet connection. It would be spotty at times, and I figured that would be a prime time for it to be spotty. And so I had my admin laptop Etherneted in to my router, and then I had my other laptop actually on a hotspot. So when I had that short internet outage, I essentially jumped over to my other laptop and that saved the day. And then once my internet came back, I jumped back over to my admin laptop. So all that to say, expect the unexpected and prepare for the worst case scenario, just so you have a contingency plan in case something bad does happen. And lesson number 2 is test, test, test. I mentioned that I stress test my connection and my whole setup, and I still had some internet issues. But because I went through those tests and was able to come up with a plan, I felt that that plan allowed me to get through that very stressful time in the event. You know, if you've ever organized a virtual event, whether it's just a webinar or a series of webinars or an actual virtual conference, you know that it can be very stressful because you only want it to go smoothly and be of value to attendees. And when you do have those small snafus, it can definitely be anxiety inducing and stressful. But if you test, whatever platform you're going to be using, make sure that you're testing it. Make sure you're kind of creating a almost like a duplicate event of the event that you're organizing, and then walk through the run of show and the whole process and make sure that you know where everything is situated in terms of you know, how do you add speakers, how do you bring attendees to various sessions, like what is that whole experience that they're going to go through, the speaker is going to go through, and you as an admin is going to go through. So test all that going into the event, and that'll absolutely make, at least at the very least, give you some confidence going into the event. Lesson number 3, and I did this last year and I'm really glad that I did: have a pre-event speaker call. One thing that I did last year and I'm really glad I did, and I'm doing it again this year, is having a pre-event speaker call. This is very important, especially if you have multiple speakers. For this year's Social Impact World Summit, I have over 20 speakers across 16 sessions across 2 days. So there's a lot of moving parts. But having this pre-event speaker call allows you to answer questions that speakers might have, but it also gives you a chance to walk the speakers through the platform that you're actually going to be using day of. The last thing you want to have happen is you have a speaker or multiple speakers join your event and they're not used to using the platform that you're going to be using for this virtual event, and they're stuck or they're confused and they don't know what to do next. So use that speaker call to walk through all of that. And as a bonus, record yourself walking through the platform that you're going to use, and then send that to the speakers as well so they can reference that leading up to the event. So not only are you doing it in the speaker call, but now they have a video that they can reference. This can be the recording of the actual speaker call, or you can record yourself walking through the platform separately. The next lesson that I have for you is seek help and advice from the experts. So one thing that I did last year was I reached out to a couple of social impact practitioners. These individuals worked at some really large organizations and they're very well versed in the whole entire social impact profession and the practice of impact in a corporate setting. I wanted to get their advice and their help picking sessions. I knew essentially the direction that I wanted this event to go in terms of theme, but I really wanted some experts to weigh in to essentially help me choose sessions that would give the most value to themselves and their peers in the social impact space. And that was extremely valuable because it gave me a little bit of insight into their mindset in regards to what they care about as social impact practitioners. And as a side note, I took those lessons and kind of those insights and applied it again to this year's summit, which helped me put together an agenda and a theme that resonates with a lot of social impact practitioners. So that's what I have for you for this episode of Venture Chronicles. Very excited that the Social Impact World Summit is coming up really quickly, September 20th and 21st, which is literally what, a few weeks away. So very excited to get that going. And of course, once the event is over, I will be coming back on and sharing some lessons I learned from this year's event. And I already have a couple that I've learned that I'm excited to share, and hopefully gives you a little bit of value. And ultimately, I really hope that this video helps you. If you're interested in organizing your own virtual summit, hopefully these lessons will help you create a really awesome, effective virtual event. So with that, I'll see you in the next episode of Venture Chronicles.